Hi, this is Dennis Consorte. I'm with Peeps, and I've got Larry Sharpe on the show. How are you, Larry?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Larry was the Libertarian candidate for governor in New York. He got about 100,000 votes, and we've got a very important question to ask Larry. Larry, are you ready?
No, but go ahead anyway.
Very good. Here is the question. It's on poverty.
Okay.
In order to attack poverty, we have instituted a minimum wage, but poverty is still a problem. What would you do to address it?
You know, poverty is a big issue, and I get that completely. And what we try to do is put a Band-Aid on it, which is like a minimum wage, right? People aren't being paid enough, so pay them more, as if that will magically happen. What happens, though, is businesses react to that. And then what winds up happening is then people go part-time or less jobs or automation, and in the long run, it still hurts. The core problem with poverty is a lack of ownership. Ownership is everything when it comes to poverty. And when it comes to that situation specifically, many poor communities don't have a lot of ownership, right? And I mean ownership of their own property, their own jobs, their own life, their own career. They simply allow inertia to kind of make things work, or they rely on government. Now, there's two issues that are at hand here. It's a cultural problem. The second issue is government now feeds that culture, right? Most poor neighborhoods, if they are immigrant neighborhoods, usually brown or black, there's a natural entrepreneurial spirit that comes from the other country they've come from, if it's an immigrant community, that they draw, and they start trying to become that thing. And then what happens? They get oppressed by government regulation, government licensing, cops coming in, busting them down, fines, fees, and all of a sudden the only way they can have success is what they wind up through, exploiting their own. You find that very common in immigrant communities. They begin exploiting their own because when new people come in, they're afraid. Now all of a sudden, now they're undocumented workers. They start getting exploited. Bad. Nothing but good. But imagine if instead we allow that entrepreneurial spirit to soar, right? To become more powerful and stronger by limiting licenses, changing licenses instead of a license to instead a credential. So now I have an option, right? There's a government credential that I can get if I want, or there's an industry association credential that I can get. Right? When I was a kid in the Bronx, poor community, there'd be people outside the stoop braiding hair to make money, right? Give me a buck, give me $2, I'll braid your hair, that kind of thing. Entrepreneurial spirit, making money. I used to sell, believe it or not, just to make money. I used to sell bottle caps for collectors in front of my stoop when I was about 5, 6 years old. Right, because I was a cute kid, people would buy my bottle caps, right, for collections, right? Whatever it was, that kind of idea. You can't do that now. Literally, if you want to braid hair in New York State, it's a $20,000 license. Now you're saying, but Larry, what about safety? Great, let there be actual guidelines that the government says, if you follow these guidelines, we give you a credential. And now the consumer decides, do I want to go to a government credentialed hair braider or not? The consumer decides. What does that do? It allows people who want to use their local communities to grow locally, right? We can now own our own jobs, own our own professions, and begin to build out with our own talent. When I was a kid, we didn't have no cabs would come to my neighborhood. I was living in a bad neighborhood. So we had gypsy cabs, right? People would spray paint one part of their door a certain color, and now we knew it was gypsy cab. And again, that would happen. We didn't have Uber or Lyft back then in the 70s, right? So that's kind of how that worked. Again, getting that entrepreneurial spirit. Sadly, you find that often in the black market. You know, what is a drug dealer? An entrepreneur, right? So you find that constantly. And again, what do? We punish them through the war on drugs. So we're constantly punishing the entrepreneurial spirit, allowing someone to either own their own job or own their own profession. Why does that matter? Because you pass that down to generations. You pass down that entrepreneurial spirit. You pass down that example. And when you gain assets and value in your small business, you pass that down to your nieces, nephews, sons, daughters. You begin to pass that piece down, right? You pass down that wealth. And that's how you get out of poverty. But I'm not done with that. Just property, right? Property is a problem. Because when it comes to property, many people in poor communities, they rent. So they don't own anything, right? They don't own this, they don't own that. In fact, you see a big thing with Rent-A-Center, right? Which not even rent furniture, right? They rent everything. Everything is rental. If everything is rental, you're relying on that monthly check to pay your monthly bills. What does that mean? You're okay with a government job or government program giving you that monthly check to pay your bills, your monthly check to pay this, your monthly money going to your EBT card to pay your food bills. You become accustomed to that. Then there's no reason to own your own property even. Everything's rental, right? We have lots of public housing. Why aren't we giving people the opportunity to buy their own public housing, right? So all of a sudden people tell me all the time, but Larry, you can't have to buy public housing. We're going to have to buy houses. That's terrible. You're going to give them, no. We have two choices. Allow them an opportunity to buy their own home or pay their rent forever. And not just pay their rent forever, but pay their kids' rent and their grandkids' rent and pay everybody's rent forever. That's the other option, the one we've got now. But if you give people ownership of their own property, at least an opportunity to do so, some will. And guess what? When you own the property, you treat it better. When you own the property, you try to fix and repair it. Something else. Some people become landlords, some won't. You give the opportunity of poor people to become landlords if they want to. Now, two good things about that. By default, you will have a mixture of social status in every given, large public housing building. That will happen naturally, right? You don't have to force it like Singapore. Just let it happen naturally. We see this already happening in London. It happened already in London. This stuff does happen. We can make it happen. So there'll be a natural diversity that will happen without government trying to fix it, which of course will make our society better. And the more important piece, let people who are poorer have the example of people who aren't poor to follow, to have those mentors, which I didn't have as a kid, right? To have those mentors. But more importantly, gentrification. People say gentrification is destroying poor neighborhoods. Not if they own, only if they rent. If you own the property in a poor neighborhood, you control gentrification. You decide, who comes in, who doesn't, who do you rent to, not. You decide if you actually want to gentrify or not. And if gentrification happens, that means property value goes up. Well, if you own the property, you're making more money. It ends the actual gentrification piece. That kind of goes where no one cares about that anymore. This is the idea of owning your own property. But something else. How about just owning your own life? Owning your own life. Deciding that your job and as your life is valuable, that I don't have to wait for inertia. And this is hard because this is reinforced by government also, which is you go into many poor communities and government does three things. One, it puts 1/3 of your population of males in prison. Two, about 1/3 of your population is on some type of government assistance. So it's writing you a check. So it puts you in prison and then writes you a check. And the people who are working, many of them are working in government. So they're getting a government check or they're getting a government housing, either by housing or prison. So that's really how it works, right? So how do you go into a poor community and say, pull government out when it's so naturally entwined in every part of their community, right? The government is beating them up by putting them in jail and breaking up their small businesses. Meanwhile, the other third of people are working for government in some way, teaching, police force, insert thing here, right? They're parks department, they're working for the government, bus drivers, they're working for the government on top of it. It's hard to do that. It's a big problem, right? If government is controlling everything and that entwined, then how can you get out of that? It's a tough issue. So you've got to start pushing all those things, right? Allowing people to grow, stopping with the punishment of the war on drugs, allowing people to not just regulate. But here's the worst part. Not just is regulation bad, not just is minimum wage bad, but all the other laws that are trying to force employers to not fire people, force employers to hire people. This forcing of that, what actually winds up happening is small businesses stop hiring minorities. It happens common. It's a common problem. They stop doing it because they fear. They fear that they're going to be attacked by the government. They fear there's going to be a lawsuit. There's lots of fear about that. And I don't want that. I want small business to see the value in diversity of thought, the value in having people who are both from poor communities, rich communities, everything together into growing their own businesses. So you find that all these ideas are actually hurting. We can change it, but it's a cultural shift, not a policy shift.
You spoke about government and how people come here from other countries and their culture is very entrepreneurial. And then they get looped into this system where the government takes care of them. And culturally, in other countries, I feel like sometimes people are really good at taking care of one another, taking care of family members and that sort of thing. Do you feel like government has destroyed that part of our culture?
Yeah, there's several things. One, the culture of the people who come, it doesn't mean their culture is entrepreneurial. The people who come, they're often entrepreneurial, to be very specific. The country where they are from may not be that, right? But the people who leave that country and come to us, their culture is entrepreneurial. Just to make sure that's a clarity on that, right? They tend to be. So yeah, your question about, how government does this, of course it does, right? Are they better at taking care of their families in other countries? Often yes, because they have to, right? In many other countries where people come from, government is blatantly corrupt, blatantly against them. Our government isn't obviously that. It is that, but it isn't obviously that. So when they come here, their assumption is government is simply something I should take advantage of. If I can take advantage of it, why shouldn't I? It's corrupt anyway. That's where they come from, right? So if you notice, a lot of people who take advantage of our rules and regulations are very often immigrant families, because they've learned, oh, I can do that, I should do that. It's a very common thing. So they think that government is just a resource for them to just use. And they assume that it's corrupt no matter what, because their government was corrupt and bad also. So they just want to grab it and use it and take it, right? And they often think, if you don't take it, you're stupid, right? Ask people in immigrant communities about, did you take advantage of this program, this idea, this thing? In a non-immigrant community, I often go, I don't need that. I don't need that handout. I don't need that. In the immigrant community, why aren't you? Stupid? Take it. Absolutely. Take advantage of that. It's the government. They're bad people. Take the stuff you can get from them. It's a resource. Take it all. And they'll very often do that. So yes, I think over time you find that there's a group of, the average poor community is very much about, how do I get mine from the government or big business? You also find out a similar thing, not just government, any big organization, which is why you'll find many people in poor communities spend a lot of time suing people, right? It's a common thing. If you ever watch TV, people who are at home, there's a lot of advertising with law firms of people saying, hey, did something happen to you? Sue them, sue them, sue them. Look at any law firm that has that does personal injury, right? As an example, look at their receptionists. All the people that they meet up front, almost all of them they purposely hire out of poor communities. Watch the reception desk. Almost all of them are hired out of poor communities. Why? So they connect with the people who are walking in the door. Most of the people walking in the door are coming from poor communities. So they're purposely hiring people at the front to immediately connect, because that's who their client base is. Their client base is poor communities, usually people of color, usually brown and black, and heavily immigrant.
Got it. All right, Larry, that was very informative. And how do people find you?
The Sharpe Way, right? Sharpeway.com. Please go there, look at what I'm doing, check out my Facebook page, check out my website. Please, I'd love to hear it.
Awesome. Larry, thanks so much. Everybody, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.